Да. Меня у тебя, у них у нас. They do use the деньги. Quatrième seed. О. Так, это что такое вообще? А, ну да. Ты смотри.
Событий, твоей любви, жизни, событий.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Piano TV. I'm Alicia, your host, and today we are going to take a look at, I was going to say composer. She's not a composer. Usually we talk about composers on this channel, but I thought it would be fun to highlight a really well-known and recently well-known performer named Valentina Lisitsa. Now, recently we did a video on Glenn Gould, who was an amazing Bach recording legend, but he's been dead quite a while. So I thought it would be fun to discuss a performer who is alive and well, whose career is relatively recent, and yeah, we're going to talk about her life, her playing style, some controversies, and some albums that you might want to check out. So let's get started. Valentina was born in Kiev in 1973, and like many professional performers, she was a child prodigy who was playing music recitals by the age of 4. Despite that, though, she really wanted to be a pro chess player all throughout childhood. But even so, she continued to study music throughout her life, attending both the Lysenko Music School for Gifted Children and later the Kiev Conservatory at age 17. And that's actually where she met her future husband, Alexei, over a game of chess. As far as her parents go, her mother was also named Valentina, who was a seamstress working as a single parent doing menial labor all of her life. She wanted working. Her parents go. Her mother was also named Valentina, who was a seamstress working. As far as her parents go, her mother was also named Valentina, who was a seamstress working as a single parent doing menial labor all of her life. She wanted Valentina to be educated in the young Valentina, to be educated in music so that she could live a better life. She hoped that her daughter would grow up to become a music teacher. Valentina and Alexei, or Val and Al, as some fans might say, entered a Miami-based competition called the Murray Dranoff 2 piano competition in 1991. So they both decided to take that as an opportunity to roll the dice and moved to America. And the next year, in 1992, the two were married. They hopped around the United States a bit, eventually settling in rural North Carolina, where they could afford an old mansion big enough for their 4 concert grand pianos. Valentina performed and competed for a while, but in the early 2000s, her opportunities started to dry up as she got a little bit older and she had a baby. So at this point, without a lot of opportunity coming in, she started to explore other career options. In Lisitsa's words, I thought, am I just going to perform for myself or do something useful? I was ready to go work as a translator for the CIA. I filled out the application online, but I didn't have the heart to press the send button. She even answered a Craigslist ad for a wanted piano player at a retirement home. But when she contacted people, apparently they'd already filled the position. So Valentina had her husband help her film a performance of Chopin's 24 Preludes. And their idea was that they would record these preludes and release them on Amazon to sell and, earn a little bit of change or whatever. However, someone took these videos and uploaded them illegally to YouTube without their consent. And initially they were furious because, for obvious reasons, but they started getting tons and tons of hits on YouTube. So they saw this as an opportunity instead. And they started selling more CDs on Amazon as well because they were getting all this YouTube publicity. So that's when they really decided to embrace YouTube. And Lisitsa's 24 Preludes are actually they are the #1 most viewed of the preludes, of Chopin's preludes on YouTube. I don't know why that was so hard to say. Later, in 2010, Valentina and Alexei pooled their resources to put together a CD of Rachmaninoff concertos, which were performed with the London Symphony Orchestra. It was a really expensive gamble, they even put their home on the line, but it did end up getting her a record deal with Decca Classics in 2012. The Royal Albert Hall offered to host Valentina's London debut in 2012, and Decca Classics recorded it. It was her first release on the label, and also Google's first ever HD live stream, which is kind of interesting. And by this point, Valentina had over 50 million YouTube views. She has since performed in many reputable and renowned venues all over the world, including Carnegie Hall and the Royal Albert Hall, among many others. In addition to performing and publishing, she also does online recitals and live streams of her practice. So one time she tried during the World Cup to live stream her piano practices, 12 hours a day of practice. She was thinking a few people might tune in, but apparently 16,000 people watched her practice, which is crazy. Now for the controversial part. Valentina Lisitsa is one of a high amount of celebrities whose Twitter feed has caused them to get into some amount of trouble. In 2015, she was scheduled to come to Toronto and play with the TSO, the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, but they ended up canceling the shows because her Twitter feed, her tweets crossed a line. And I don't want to get into it too much on this channel, but the tweets had to do with the conflict between the Ukraine and Russia. So they were of a political and sensitive issue. The Toronto Star criticized this decision, saying that she was scheduled to play the piano, and banning a musician for expressing opinions that some believe to be offensive shows an utter failure to grasp the concept of free speech. Lisitsa's response to the criticism is that she uses satire and hyperbole, which in a hyper-literal society of opinions that some believe to be offensive shows an utter failure to grasp the concept of free speech. Lisitsa's response to the criticism is that she uses satire and hyperbole, which in a hyper-literal society when you can write anything and it's going to be taken at face value, just obviously isn't going to go over very well. Now let's talk about Lisitsa's repertoire and her discography, because it's really broad and she does a whole bunch of different performers. Where I find she really excels is with romantic music, such as late Beethoven and Liszt and Chopin and Rachmaninoff. All of those are among her top. In addition to the obvious romantic guys, she's also performed and recorded Mozart and Shostakovich, and even more modern composers like Michael Nyman and Philip Glass. What I find really crazy is that she can play over 40 concertos. She has over 40 concertos in her repertoire. And concertos, as you know, are really long and difficult and complicated. They're pieces that are specifically meant to show off the virtuosity of a performer. In Lisitsa's relatively new career, she's already made quite the smattering of recordings. We already talked about the recording of her Albert Hall recital, as well as the Rachmaninoff concerto she bet her career on. But she's also recorded plenty of Liszt, Michael Nyman, music from the piano and Wonderland. She's recorded Chopin and Chopin etudes, as well as Philip Glass and others. She's also recorded a couple albums of duets with her husband Alexei, and has recorded and performed with the renowned violinist Hilary Hahn. So what about Lisitsa as a performer? Well, interestingly, maybe, she was a really shy child, and even as an adult hated and hates to, stand up and talk in front of people. But she doesn't consider standing up on stage and talking to be in the same ballpark as sitting on stage and playing the piano. She says that when she plays, she doesn't sense people, and so doesn't inspire the same fear. Now, in terms of composers that she plays, she would love to add more Mozart to her repertoire, but she says she'll avoid Bach until later in my life when I grow up. For now, my brain is running around too much in all directions. Things I learned, Bach is grown-up music. According to Ivan Hewitt from the Daily Telegraph, Lisitsa is a serious artist. Her essential attribute is a fevered urgency, an almost desperate desire to suck the expressive marrow from a piece. Another journalist, Robert Everett Green of the Globe and Mail, says, Lisitsa plays the piece as if the outcome were a matter of life or death. She may be the most exciting pianist you've never heard of. And then her own perspective on performing, she says, I'm nothing but a conduit. The music goes through my ears, my fingers. Composer is God. Composer creates music. We're performers. We're just passing it on. My personal perspective on her playing is that she has a really fluid quality to her playing and it has remarkable control. Most of the comparisons that I try to make regarding her playing involve water. Like her fingers, like when you watch the move, they look like water. I don't know if that makes sense. There's a delicacy to the way that she plays, even when she's playing like a full throttle fortissimo. It somehow still comes across as clean and never overdone, which is really easy to do with romantic music. It's easy to take a romantic composition by someone like Chopin and just I don't know, this is me overdoing it. But she's able to pull out a lot of subtle nuance and emotion from a piece without having it feel like just sappy or sentimental. And that is all for